Corporate America hates the word fun because they think it doesn't imply business results. You can't change a culture by talking about it. You have to give people a toolkit they choose to use when you're not around. So make it fun. And then you can change a culture.
Hello, and welcome to Sink or Swim, a bi-weekly podcast brought to you by RentSync, where we provide an insider's look into the prop tech, multifamily, and rental housing industry. In each episode, we take a deep dive into the technologies and strategies that have helped companies overcome operational challenges and increase the value of their multifamily investments. So, without further delay, let's get into today's discussion.
Welcome back to Sink or Swim. I'm Mitch Fanning with RentSync, formerly LWS. And today is a special episode because joining me today is Duncan Wardle, who was the former head of innovation and creativity at Disney, and drawing on that experience is now a highly sought after keynote speaker and innovation creativity consultant who works with a number of companies, including Apple, the NBA, and many more. Duncan, how are you doing today?
Hello, good. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on. Now, before we start, I have to ask, did you have anything to do with the NBA resuming its season at Disney? And the reason I'm asking, I see that you've worked with the NBA. I know that you obviously worked at Disney. I just had to ask, was there a connection there? Did you make that deal happen?
No. However, but here's the interesting thing, because I got a call from Adam Silver 2-3 years ago, and he said, I got a bet. I said, oh yeah, what's that? He says, virtual basketball revenue will exceed real basketball revenue by the year 2040. I was like, okay. And now think of the post-COVID world. I'll go out with a fairly bold and provocative statement. The sports industry is dead. It just doesn't know it yet. And what I mean by that is it will be surpassed by virtual sports within 20, maybe 30 years, but I think 20. The move to virtual is coming so fast. And so we actually piloted 2 teams. We piloted the virtual Orlando Magic against the virtual New York Knicks. It was 3 years ago. On average, the Orlando Magic get about 14,000 people to a real game. In a virtual game, they got 28,000 people to show up in person, obviously pre-COVID-19, and they had about 2 million watching online, and I think they made about $500,000 in virtual merchandise. So yes, I believe virtual basketball will be in the Olympics by 2036, and I see sports is becoming, look at sport, right? It used to be sport. Right now, you go to a basketball game, and every now and then, a game of basketball breaks out between the cheerleaders, the dancers, the popcorn girl, the dancer, the t-shirt firing competitions, the dunking competitions, and then every sort of half an hour, so you get a bit of basketball. So it is becoming entertainment, and entertainment is moving virtual. Just look at the last 90 days. You used to go to shops. Now you use Instacart for your supermarket shopping. You use Amazon for everything else. You used to go to restaurants. Now you use Uber Eats. You used to go to the gym. Now you've got a virtual gym. Will we go back in the numbers that we used to after there's a vaccine? No, we will not. Will you shake hands with another human being again as long as you live? No, you will not. Another provocative statement. Not really. It's common sense. Shaking hands is a habit, and you won't do it until at least a year after the vaccine is in. And by that time, the habit will be broken. Now multiply that one simple gesture of the human race by all the changes that are coming into industry. I mean, you and I were talking just before we came on about the moving from big cities to small cities. Corporate America has just realized it no longer needs to fly. We used to go out on the Disney shuttle. It was called the Disney shuttle because everybody on the plane on a Monday morning was from Disney going from Orlando to LA for a 2-hour meeting. Do you think that's going to happen again? Absolutely not. Corporate business travel, gone forever. So can the airline survive when all of their model is, the first class passenger? No, probably not under that premise, because nobody is going to send their teams across the country to a 2-hour meeting anymore, because they suddenly realize, apart from carbon emissions, you've got the costs. I lose Duncan for 3 days, but if I put him in a Zoom, he can do it in 2 hours. So what does that mean for corporate real estate? That's gone.
Exactly.
The acceleration is it's terrifying and exciting at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, I knew we'd go off script at some point.
Sorry.
I didn't know we didn't go.
Soon.
We do so soon, and so I should have expected it. But just to tie off that, I want to extend a thank you though, regardless, because we've got a lot of Raptors fans in our office now. if there's anything you can do to help their odds in the next game, that would be grateful. But today we're gonna talk all about innovation, obviously, and creativity. We're gonna riff on many different topics, and we already have started. To give some people some context here, also, Jason, the president, and I actually met you at, and we were talking about this, met you at industry conference that we did before COVID happened, and we saw that your keynote on the theory of creativity, and we just loved it. And we actually were thinking of having you do a keynote at one of our events before all this craziness. But also, I thought it'd be an interesting time to talk about this because there's that old saying that winners of economic downturns don't cut, they accelerate. But I would almost add to that they accelerate and innovate. And so I think this is, even though this episode is not specific to our industry, which is kind of the multifamily or real estate technology industry, indirectly it's very relevant. So before we kind of get into that and we kind of, keep the conversation moving along, maybe we can start off with a short story of how you ended up as the head of innovation and creativity at Disney.
Luck. No. So I got a job. I was the barman in the Rose and Crown pub at Epcot. That was my first job at Disney World. And I went back to London and I got a job in a pub there. And I called the Disney office every day for 27 days. And they got fed up of taking my calls. So I got a half-hour interview and I became the cappuccino boy. And 3 months into the job, I was asked to be the character coordinator for the royal premiere of Who Framed Roger Rabbit. It was 1988. It was in the presence of the Princess of Wales, Diana. And I was told, you just look after the character. You thought, okay, I can't screw that up. Well, a contingency plan. So all I had to do was stand at the bottom of the stairs. Roger Rabbit would come bouncing down the stairs. The princess would come in along the receiving line. If she chose to engage with Roger, great. If she moved straight into the theatre, tough. How could you possibly screw that up, right? So I thought, well, that was the day when I found out what contingency plan was, because I didn't have one. So Roger comes bouncing down the stairs. Now, contingency plan would tell you you'd got a tape measure out, and the average step on a stair is probably about the same length as your foot, right? Unless you're a 6'5" rabbit with 1.5 feet length of feet. So Roger, with 6 steps to go, trips over his own feet and is now very quickly hurtling directly through the air towards the head of the Princess of Wales. Whereupon 2 Secret Service officers popped out of nowhere and just took him out. I mean, they flattened him. They didn't even hesitate. So there's a very famous photograph, you can see it on Reuters' website, it's in black and white, of Roger on the ground with his hands up in the air. So it was the classic Roger stuff. And then 2 Secret Service heavies on top of him. And then this young 21-year-old in a suit and tie at the back called Duncan going, shit, I'm fired. And so I didn't go to the office the next day because I assumed I had been fired. I got a call. He said, where are you? I said, I'm at home. I said, well, I assumed I was fired. He goes, no. This is exactly the sort of publicity we needed for Roger Rabbit. I was like, oh my God, I could make a career out of this. And so for the next 20 years, I just did the most audacious, outrageous stunts for Disney. I sent my son's Buzz Lightyear into space on a space shuttle. He is the longest serving astronaut in space, 18 months consecutive service. I built an Olympic-sized swimming pool for Michael Phelps to swim down Main Street. I stole the turkey from the White House at Thanksgiving and took it to. So I was just like a kid in the candy store. And about 10 years ago, I got a call from the chairman. He said, look, you're the guy with all the big ideas who actually seems to get them done around here. You're going to be in charge of innovation and creativity. To which my exact response was, well, what the hell is that? And he said, I don't know, we just need more of it. I was like, wow, thanks for the brief. So the first thing I did, because I didn't know what I was doing, I thought, okay, I'm going to survey. We surveyed 5,000 people and we asked them, what were the barriers to being more innovative and creative at work? And we heard 5. By far and away, the number 1 was, I don't have time to think. Always the number 1. Number 2, we're risk-averse culture. Number 3, consumer insight is being underused. We're a product-centric culture. Number 4, ideas got stuck, diluted, or killed as they move through our processes. And number 5 was we all had a different definition of innovation. So we're all heading in a different direction. So I thought, So I tried 4 models of innovation. Model number 1 was easy. I brought IDEO in and said, hey, here's the brief, make me look good. Because I didn't know what I was doing at the time and they were the gurus of innovation. Well, yeah, great. But with any consultancy, they come in for a period of time and guess what? Then they leave. And then you have to ask yourself, have they taught you anything about how they do what they do? And of course not, otherwise you wouldn't hire them again. So you thought, okay, I'll build an innovation team. I'll be in charge of it. What could possibly go wrong? Well, if you have a legal team or a sales team or an IT team, does anybody else in your office do legal, sales, or IT? No, of course not. Well, guess what happens when you create an innovation team? You've just told subliminally the rest of the organization, hey, you're off the hook. We've got an innovation team. You just keep doing business the way you've always done. And so then we did an accelerator program where we found we would bring in young tech startups, where we found we could take products and services to market much quicker than we usually had because they weren't governed by our constraints. But here's where we had failed on our brief was we want to embed a culture of innovation into everybody's DNA. We thought, I've not done it. And so, and then after 30 years at Disney, people said, well, why'd you leave? You're head of innovation creativity. Are you mad? I was like, no, I'm not mad. It's easy. There's a monstrous gap in the market and it's been accentuated through COVID-19. All we hear our bosses say is, we must innovate. You must think differently. We must be brave. You must take risks. And all of us are sitting there, as I did at Disney, and go, how? Tell me how. And nobody's ever showed anybody how. So I thought, screw that. I'm going to leave and I'm going to create a toolkit that makes innovation easier, creativity tangible, and the process fun. Corporate America hates the word fun because they think it doesn't imply business results. You can't change a culture by talking about it. You have to give people a toolkit they choose to use when you're not around. So make it fun. And then you can change a culture.
It's interesting because, so the first thing I got from that is we need to have a part 2 on just how you went from being a bartender to the second thing was what I heard was grit, persistence, trial and error, and willingness to fail. And those are all really scary but also core to really, I believe, just being successful, but also, maybe the root of creativity and innovation. I think before we kind of talk about the how, I think it's important to kind of define, maybe in your words, what creativity and innovation means. So maybe we can start there.
Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. Now back to the show.
This is easy. Creativity is the ability to have an idea, and everybody can. Innovation is the ability to get it done. I oversimplify everything. It's because people understand it. But here's the thing. People in every single industry, legal, IT, sales, finance, marketing, engineering, operations. Oh, you're not creative. Oh, the creatives, no, they're on the second floor. And suddenly we've all grown up. But here's the thing. When you were a little boy, you got a box for your birthday. It came in a monstrous big present came inside it. It was a massive box. And you took the present out of the box and you played with the gift for about 2 hours. And what did you spend the next 5 days playing with?
The box.
Yeah, because it was your castle, it was your rocket ship, it was your fort, it was anything you wanted it to be. And then you went to school and the teacher told you it's just a box. And then they said, color it inside the lines. It was the first thing you were told at school. So our creativity is being attacked from a very, very, very early age. We're all born curious. Do you have small children?
I did at one point. No, yeah.
Well, that's good. So think back to when they were young. Yep. What's the one word question they ask you time and time and time again?
Why?
Why? Because they know you lied the first time. That's why. And so they're actually better than your data and your consumer insights team at getting to the insight for innovation. Why is that? Because they don't stop at the first why or the second why. If I surveyed everybody in Toronto and Niagara today and said, why do you go to Disney on holiday? The number one answer I get on a survey is I go for the rides. Okay, great, terrific. That tells me to spend $240 million on capital investment strategy. But if I paused for a moment and act childlike, not childish, and said, well, why do you go for the rides? Well, I remember it's a small world. Well, why is that important to you? Well, I remember the music. Why is that significant? I used to go with my mum. Why is that so important? I take my daughter now. On the fifth why, you've got to the insight for innovation. Is not coming for a new capital investment strategy. She's coming for her personal memory and nostalgia. That is a communication campaign, not a capital investment strategy. But if we stop at the first why, we never get to the insight for innovation. So we're all born creative. We're all born curious. We're all born with an amazing intuition. Have you ever stared at the back of the head of somebody and you think they're really hot and they immediately turn around and looked at you and you had to look away really quickly and blush? Yes, of course we have. We all have. How did they know? It's called intuition. You have 100 billion neurons in your first brain. It's the one inside your skull. You have 100 million neurons inside your second brain, the one in your stomach. The decisions you make every single day as a consumer, and to a certain extent with business, what did you say? I went with my gut. It's a remarkably powerful tool. We were tasked by Disneyland Paris to get more people to come more often, spend more money. Our data told us who could afford us, who had an affinity to the brand, who was a 10 out of 10 of I'm coming this year. Well, guess what? They hadn't come. So my intuition told me our data was missing something, and these people were either liars or procrastinators, because they were 10 out of 10 of I'm coming, but they didn't come. So we went off with the data that we had got, what I call our got clues, and we spent a day with our consumer. You'll be amazed at the insights for innovation you can find out of simply spending a day in your consumer's living room, because sometimes it will reveal something that's in your data, but guess what? That's on page 37, bullet point 14, and you're already worried about what's for dinner tonight, and you can't feel bullet points. And so we spent a day with our consumers, and here's what we found. Now, close your eyes for me, if you would.
Okay.
There's a photograph of your children somewhere in your house, a particular one that you're thinking of at this particular moment in time. Tell us which room it is in.
It's in my office.
Okay. And can you tell us who's in the photograph?
It's my daughter and son.
Okay. And what are their names?
Mia and Dylan.
Mia and Dylan. And how old were Mia and Dylan the day that photograph was taken?
About 7 or 8.
Okay. And today?
They're 21. They're twins.
Bingo. We found, oh, lovely. I'm a twin. I've got a twin sister. I'm going off script again, was I? So here's the thing. We found the same clue in every household we walked into. We were in 26 households, and we all came back together, and we all had exactly the same clue. When I asked how old the children were in the photograph, they were anywhere from 2 years to 22-year-olds older in reality. And our intuition told us there's something going on here. So why is this? Well, and for those of you listening to the show who are too young, who don't have children yet, how do I know it to be true? Because your parents have that dorky one of you in first grade in the middle of their living room now that you wish they got rid of years ago. That's how I know it's true. It's in every household on the planet. So what's going on? Do we not print photographs of our children anymore? Yes, we do. I bet you printed a picture of Mia and Dylan on their graduation, on their bar mitzvahs.
Yep.
Yeah, of course we do. But why is that photograph still there? Right, because and so my intuition told me we were missing something. So we dug a bit deeper, and we parents will tell you, as you would, I'm sure, we want Mia and Dylan to grow up, to go to middle school, junior school, high school, college, be happy, graduate, be happy and healthy, successful. That's what you want for your kids, right?
Absolutely.
No, you're lying to me. You're lying to me. You want Mia and Dylan back in that photograph when they're 6 and 7, and you're still their God. They come running to you when you walk in the door. Now you're lucky if you get a grunt when you walk in the door. Yeah. It's true. Why do we love our grandchildren so much? They're right back in the frame. So we dug a bit deeper using our intuition, and here's what we found. There are 3 bittersweet transitions that take place between a parent and a child. As you cross through that transition, you both want to step back, but you can't. These are mums telling me the story, but I'm a dad. I've got intuition. I know exactly where I was for the first one. It was the day my son, who was 10 at the time, turned the bedroom door at Christmas Eve. His eyes were half full of tears. He said, "Are you Santa Claus?" It's like boom. In that 1 second, imagination, creativity. And what really hurt was he said, I'm not your little dad. I'm not your little boy anymore, Daddy. I'm growing up. Now, Mia. So Mia does not remember the second bittersweet transition. You do. She can't even remember it took place. But you do, and you probably know where you were that day. I know where I was when my daughter was 13. I was on the outside of the curb. The pavement was inside me. Panera was on my left. It was a Tuesday morning, the day she dropped my left hand in public for the first time, because she didn't want to hold Daddy's hand in public anymore because it was awkward. I remember where I was. Most dads do. Girls do not. They don't even remember it took place. And the last one for us was when we drove her up to college a few years ago when she was 18. We hugged, we cheered, we laughed, put her in a dorm, got in the car and cried her eyes out all the way back to the airport. Now, don't forget, our going in hypotheses. We build it, they will come. Why? That's the way we've always done it here. And our data says they come from the new attractions. But by simply spending a day with the consumer and using our intuition, we found out what was really important to them. Mum does not wake up every morning on a wet Wednesday in Niagara going, I wonder if Disney's going to have new attractions this year. No, she wakes up every single morning worrying about how quickly her children are growing up and how she wants to make special memories while they still believe, while they still hold my hand, while they're still here. That's a segmented communication campaign, one that drove record results, record revenues, and turned a very product-centric, we know better culture into a consumer-centric culture, where it's mandatory for every Disney executive to spend at least one day a year working in a frontline cast member position in a Disney theme park. Ask yourself, when was the last time you did that? And one day a year in the living room of one of your consumers. Ask yourself if you've ever done that. We say we're consumer-centric. No, you're not, because you've never spent a day with a consumer. Therefore, you are not consumer-centric. You're too arrogant. Yeah, I'm an executive. I couldn't possibly. I was the same. Get out of your offices, get out of your data, and go 100%. Spend a day with your consumer. And the last one is imagination. We're born with an amazing imagination. You still have one. You had that weird dream last week with David Beckham, Beyonce, and a unicorn that you don't want to tell me about. We all have weird dreams. Here's the thing, though. The most employable skill sets of the next decade are the ones you were born with. How do I know that to be true? Because I've worked with 4 artificial intelligence experts, and I've asked them, do you believe we could program creativity, intuition, curiosity, or imagination into AI in the next decade? And the answer is no. So think about all the jobs that can be programmed, right? There's a lot of them.
Yep.
Right. The robots are coming. They say that AI will take away 20 to 30% of the jobs in North America by 2030. That's not far from now, right? So there's 2 pieces, I believe. One is, if we actually if we bring back all the core human traits that were important to us, that we were told were not important, I believe they will be the most employable skill sets of the next decade. And I'll go slightly further, and this one is a little radical, but I genuinely believe it. We don't need to be scared of AI for 2 reasons. One is we've got the skill sets that AI won't have, at least any time in the next decade. And 2 is we will merge. We will become a superhuman race. It started with the Neuralink that Elon Musk put into the pig's brain last week. Do you think we're going back from that? No, we're not.
No.
Imagine walking into a meeting 15 years from now and meeting somebody you haven't met for 3 years, but you can remember every single thing about that conversation and what took place. And I mean, wouldn't you want that? Yeah, hell yeah. Look, our brains are brilliant. Our brains, you used to remember all your best mates' telephone numbers. You can't remember them now. No. Because your brain has figured out that it doesn't need that disk space for phone numbers anymore. So it's freed it up to think about something else. So think about your memory being on a disk now. Suddenly, what other things could we do as a human race? It would be amazing. Now, I'll be long gone, but we shouldn't fear AI. But between AI and the human race, we will become a superhuman race. But even if you don't want the chip in the brain, I would argue just focus on the things that you actually did really well when you were a child, and you'll do extremely well.
Well, you're gonna really love one of the quick fire round questions. There's 2 things I got from that. Is number one, I always tell my team, I head up marketing. It's always get out of the office, because that's where you're gonna solve problems. And 2, it wasn't holding my daughter's hand; it was putting her on my shoulder. I know exactly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
The second thing, the last thing I'll say is there. So, as we, I want to be conscious of your time, but I can't let you leave this conversation. Maybe not necessarily, because I think we've talked about some of the barriers of creativity, but really talking about a couple key concepts. One being the naive expert, but maybe even the outlier, because in the outlier, there's the Disney story, which I find fascinating. So maybe we can start with that one. If we have time, we can come back to the naive expert.
Hang on, remind me the outlier.
So it was the whole idea around how Walt was trying to get, I believe it was Fantasia. Yeah.
No, this is genius, right? I call it what if. What if the rules in your organization no longer existed? Everybody always says, oh, we've got rules. Well, what do you think Walt Disney World's got? They host 25 million people a year. It's the largest single-site employer in the United States of America. Guess what? They've got rules. So, but wouldn't it be nice if you could break one? Metaphor. Why do you do a weekly meeting? Oh, we've always done a weekly meeting. Why do you do a weekly report? Well, we've always done weekly. Why do you do performance reviews that nobody ever reads? Oh, because we've always done performance reviews. Well, stop. So here's what Walt did in 1940. He showed Fantasia in the movie theater, and he realized that he wanted it to have mist inside the theater during the rain sequence. He wanted heat pumped in during the fire sequence, and the theater owner said no. So Walt's listed the rules of going to movie theater. I must sit down, I must be quiet, I must go to set time, I can only watch one movie at a time. Walt, can't control the environment. So he said, well, what if I could? Well, that's not provocative enough. The more provocative and absurd your what if question, the further out of your river of thinking, your area of expertise you'll get. So he said, well, what if I take my movies out of theatre? An absurd suggestion. Well, wait a minute. If I take my movies out of theatre, Well, they can't be two-dimensional. Well, what if I made them three-dimensional? Well, then I'd have to have people play the characters. Well, what if I put them in costume? If I had people in characters, in costume, Cinderella can't live next to Jack Sparrow and Davy Crockett. People wouldn't be immersed in her story. Well, wait, what if I put her in a different land? Oh, wait a minute, what if I called it Disneyland? Boom. Gave birth to Netflix. The founder of Netflix listed the rules of going to Blockbuster. Had to be kind of rewind, never get the one I want, had to drive to physical store. And he said, what if there was no physical store? The founder of Facebook said, what if we could get together when we can't? Came up with Facebook. The founders of Uber were in a bar. It was late at night. It was 1 o'clock in the morning. They'd had too much to drink. It was raining. And they just said, hey, what if every car was a cab? Boom. And so it's just a genius. It's easy to look at these big companies and make it unrelatable because you think, oh, I've got a much smaller budget. Well, no, that's an excuse. There was a very small company in Great Britain in the 70s that just made glasses that we drink out of. They only had about 28 employees. And they found that when they were shipping and wrapping the glasses, there was not enough production, too much breakage. So they went down to the shop floor and they observed and they wrote down the rules one at a time. 26 employees, conveyor belt, 12 glasses to a box, cardboard box, separated by a corrugated cardboard, glasses being wrapped in newspaper, employees reading newspaper. So somebody had the courage to ask the relatively provocative what if question, what if we poke their eyes out? Well, that's against the law and it's not very nice. But because he had the courage to ask the provocative and absurd what if statement, the lady sitting next to him said, well, wait a minute, why don't we just hire blind people? So they did. And their production went up 20%, breakage went down over 76%, and the British government gave them a 50% salary subsidy for hiring people with disabilities. Step one, list the rules of your industry without thinking about them. As many as you can, as quickly as you can. Step two, pick one of those rules and in less than 2 minutes, ask as many what if and absurd what if statements as you can. The reason I'm asking you to do it fast is because if you do it slow, you'll think of all the reasons you can't do it. And then one of those will spark a new idea for a new industry. It's a very clever tool to use because you're metaphorically breaking the rules without actually breaking them.
And again, we won't have to dive into this, but the two other kind of key concepts that kind of tie into that is bravery and the naive expert. And one reason I like the naive expert is because it's obviously bringing somebody outside of that industry in. And I'm not from this industry that I'm currently in right now. And so for the first year, I asked a lot of whys. Why is it done this way? And so I really felt I connected with that concept. And I think a lot of times you see that where people see sometimes not having that domain or industry experience as a kind of weakness, but in some cases it can actually it can be a strength.
Hire people who don't know anything about what you're working on. Ooh, that's a bold and provocative statement, isn't it? Because otherwise you'll hire people that think like you. And so what? How's that going to help you? We say our biggest barrier is I don't have time to think. I would argue it's not. I argue it's called your river of thinking. All of your expertise and all of your experience and all the years you worked in that, 1,000 reasons why the new idea that somebody comes into the office door with won't work, and you instantly shut it down. I was asked to design a new retail dining and entertainment complex for Hong Kong Disneyland. I had in the room 12 white male American architects over 50. That's called groupthink. So I invited in as my naive expert a young female Chinese chef. What is the success criteria for a naive expert? They don't work in your industry. That's it. They don't know what you're working on. So what does that give them permission to do that you can't? They can ask the silly question that you're too embarrassed to ask in front of your peers that needs to be asked. They can throw out the audacious idea ungoverned by your politics, your hierarchy, and having to get it done. They will not solve the challenge for you ever, but they will say something to stop you thinking the way you always do your river of thinking to help you think differently. So we asked the architects to draw a house and we gave them 7 seconds to do it. And if your listeners had a pen and a piece of paper, I'll give them those 7 seconds. Please draw a house. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pens down. Let me describe your house to you. On the ground floor, in the middle is a door. Above the door on either side, you've chosen to draw 2 windows, not 4. And you're still so insecure, you drew bars over them. And what shape is the roof? It's a bloody triangle. Why? Because your river of thinking, all your area of expertise says that's what a house looks like. And you didn't even consider the alternatives. So the young female Chinese, we all held our pictures up. They all look the same as each other. We laughed because we realized we stayed in our river of thinking what a house looks like. Her picture, however, was dim sum architecture. It was a round bamboo dish with a front door and dim sum sitting on the top and a little chimney with a Chinese lady waving out the window. And so we laughed because she gave us permission to stop thinking traditionally about architecture and consider audacious architecture. Well, if any company in the world could consider audacious architecture, it'd be the Walt Disney Company. On the way out the door, and if Disney Imagineer slapped a post-it note on her picture which said, dim sum architecture, distinctly Disney, authentically Chinese. 7 years
Amazing.
later, the strategic brand positioning for Shanghai Disney Resort, distinctly Disney, authentically Chinese, which guided everything, including the design of the resort.
Amazing. I feel like, selfishly, I could keep this going for another half an hour, but I definitely, again, want to, because again, you've based on what we've talked about, there's a couple of things. So your schedule's tight, but what I'd like to do is tying all this together. What are some of the kind of key takeaways, really for any business, but I guess, obviously for multifamily operators or just the real estate tech industry.
Real estate. Just think what three-dimensional printing is going to do to house pricing in the next 2 decades. It will decimate it. You'll be able to print houses for $50 by the year 2040. And think about what that would do for minimalism, which is coming anyway. The industry is going to get absolutely shit. If you aren't into 3D printing yet, you should be, because they're building houses in Houston. You should look it up. I saw it in the New York Times last week. They built a resort in Kenya on a 3D printer in a week. I mean, come on.
Well,
what's that going to do to the industry? It's amazing.
Somebody I just spoke with who definitely is really into unique design in the real estate development. I'm going to send this to them because I think they're going to run with that idea.
Well, part 2 is corporate real estate. You're going to have to get out of that because that's going, because 60% of your employees won't need to be in an office in 2 years from now, because Twitter has already announced nobody's coming back. JP Morgan has said probably nobody is ever coming back. All of the back of house employees will never come back. What are we going to do with corporate? What will we do with multi-story car parks when everybody has self-driving cars? Right? I mean, it's all going to change. I think it's fascinating. But I do think in terms of urban planning, for years, the experts, the gurus have always predicted that we will always come together as a human race and cities will get bigger and bigger and bigger. And there'll be 5 mega cities by the year 2050. I've always argued, no, technology will actually push us away from the big cities. If I could live in the middle of some beautiful place in Canada and still get my work done, I'd be a very happy man. And I actually think COVID-19 just made that a reality. I don't think the megacities will continue in the direction they were. I do think that the sprawl out into other areas will grow much faster than we'd anticipated before.
It definitely seems like it's the trend. Okay, so we're gonna change gears. We're gonna go into what I personally, normally like to think of as my favorite part of the conversation, which is the quick fire round. So I'll say 5 short questions, and you'll have about 30 to 60 seconds to answer them. So Duncan, are you ready?
Ready.
What's one thing you wish your phone could do?
Put the memory into my brain.
Okay. 2. Do you agree or disagree with the following statement? A good decision today is better than a perfect one tomorrow.
Always.
Number 3. What do you believe that others might disbelieve?
What do I believe that other people disbelieve? I think people don't think they can innovate. I think people don't think they're creative. I think they're idiots. Everybody's creative. Creativity is the ability to have an idea. You can do it. Innovation is the ability to get it done. And as Walt once said, if you can dream it, you can do it. We put man on the space. We put a chip into a pig's brain. Those were dreams. Those were science fiction dreams. Artificial intelligence, iRobot, was written by Asimov in 1954, I think it was. Well, guess what? They're here. So yeah, don't be scared. When I left Disney after 30 years, was I scared? Of course I was scared. I thought I was stupid. But look, March this year, I became unemployed. I lost 100% of my business on March the 15th. I flew back from Copenhagen. I'm a speaker. I stand on stages. Guess what? That's not going to happen to the end of 2022 because people will be frightened to go to conferences, and companies will be liable if they send their employees to a conference and the employee gets sick. Virtually in the last 3 months, it's taken off. I've done 1 as an avatar. I've done 2 in virtual reality with a VR headset. It's just the technology. I can now speak through an artificial intelligence in 15 different languages through Zoom live. And now that opens up markets that I've never spoken to before. And by the way, I don't have to get 15 hours on a plane during a pandemic to do it. So don't be scared.
Sounds like you did the what if exercise. The next question, as a result of COVID, what have you changed your mind about lately?
Gosh, well, that's a big question, isn't it? Bloody hell. It's for all of us, isn't it? It's the importance of life, importance of family. And we forget that because we all go marching on our jobs and what are our deadlines and everything else. And suddenly I'm sure, I don't know if Dylan or Mia came home or if they were at college or where they were, but my daughter was up in New York. She got furloughed, came back to Orlando. We went for a bicycle ride together. And don't forget, I still remember the day she dropped my hand. I haven't been on a bicycle ride with my daughter since she was 6. She's now 25. And that was a wonderful day. And I just think that and the sense of community. And let's face it, this is where I'll keep politics out of it. Some countries have a great sense of communities and other countries don't. And I'd rather be in one that did.
Absolutely. And I did definitely experience some of that similar to you as far as with family. So definitely a silver lining. So last question, and I promise to bring back AI. So artificial intelligence fills you with hope or dread. Pick one.
Hope. It's easy. It's coming. It's here anyway. So you can run away and pretend it's not coming, like a pandemic. No, it's here. But again, the experts have already said you cannot program creativity. You cannot program intuition and empathy. You cannot program curiosity. You cannot program intuition. Guess what? You've got all 4. You've just been told they weren't important for the last decade. And again, if you're younger, yes, you will be a superhuman. But think you'll live to 200 years of age. You'll be able to think of things that I've never thought of before because your brain won't be cluttered with all the crap it has to think about at the moment because that'll be on a chip. Your iPhone will be inside your head. There's no question about that. And you could be excited about it. You could be terrified about it. It's called sort of saying like social media. Oh, no, I need my privacy. Oh, but wait, I'm on Facebook every day. Well, make up your mind.
Yeah, exactly. So really the final question here is, where can people find you on the interweb?
The Fox and Hounds. No, I'm just kidding. In my Duncan Wardle, DUNCANWARDLE.com.
Perfect. And I'll also put that in the show notes. I'll also put some links to the theory of creativity, the one that Jason and I saw. I think it's amazing. I think everyone should watch it and also share it with their team, and also share a couple other ones that I've found as well. Listen, that's it for another episode. Duncan, thank you so much for doing this. Until next time, keep swimming.
Thank you very much indeed.
You've reached the end of another episode of Sink or Swim. Make sure to visit us at rentsync.com/podcast to access show notes, key takeaways, and where you can sign up to our newsletter to receive free bonus content. If you found value in this show, please also remember to rate, review, and subscribe. That's this week's episode of Sink or Swim. Don't forget to join us next time for another jam-packed episode. Thanks for listening.